But is it possible he's got 350 voice messages?
I doubt that very much. I just don't think so.
You doubt it?
Yeah, I doubt it. I mean, unless
Wouldn't
he's
he be
taping me.
I mean, if you've never really contacted him.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and over 10 years experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and television shows all over the world. Everybody is talking about Baby Reindeer. The recent Netflix hit series tells the dramatic story of a struggling stand-up comedian and his eccentric stalker. The series is masterfully directed, written, and above all, acted. But perhaps the most shocking element are the 5 words on the screen at the beginning of the first episode. This is a true story. Not based on a true story, not inspired by true events. This is a true story. To make matters even more interesting, it's a story about the actual lead actor of the series, Richard Gadd, who wrote a live one-man show about his life, which was then turned into the Netflix series Baby Reindeer. The supporting character, who they named Martha to protect her real identity, is brilliantly portrayed by the incredible Jessica Gunning. Martha, who claims to be a successful lawyer, starts off as quirky, maybe even a little sweet, and turns out to be a delusional and unstable stalker and assailant. Shortly after the release of the series, the interneted, and fans used the details of the show to figure out who the character of Martha represents, and her name is Fiona Harvey. Just a few days ago, Fiona Harvey, the real-life Martha, made an appearance on Piers Morgan Uncensored, where she answered all his questions about her relationship with Richard Gadd and just how much of the series is accurate. In this video, we're looking at that interview. We're going to look at her body language, facial expressions, but most importantly, word choice and narrative to try to figure out just how much of Baby Reindeer was accurate. Let's go.
Have you watched the drama?
Not at all. I've heard about the court scene, about the jail sentences and all this sort of stuff.
But you really haven't watched any of it?
I haven't watched any of it.
When did you know that you were the person being depicted in this?
5 years ago on BBC Breaking News, I saw Mr. Gadd had written a play for the Edinburgh Festival, and he was holding up placards, MP's wife stalker, and all of this, and he'd called it Baby Reindeer. That's all I knew. And I thought, well, I've only met this guy 2 or 3 times. I don't know him. And left it at that. I should have possibly jumped it at that stage.
Okay, so right off the top, there's already some great stuff. I want to start with right at the end where she said, I've only met this guy 2 or 3 times. I don't know him. And we see a bunch of stuff right in that moment. So as she says, I don't know him, there's a pause as her chin thrusts forward like this, and we see this rapid blinking in her eyes, which we call an eye flutter. There's some great research on eye flutters, and it's a behavior that's seen pretty much everywhere in the world, and it's consistent with processing. When we're encoding something to our memory, or when we're retrieving something from our memory, we tend to rapidly flutter our eyes like this. This is also a behavior that we see pre-emotion. So it's a way to process not just thought, but also emotion. So sometimes before someone's about to cry, you might see a flutter, but even just before someone's about to get really angry in a pre-confrontation, we tend to see this kind of fluttering as they're processing how to handle this emotion and what to do about it. Another behavior that's very consistent with that pre-aggression is those chin thrusts or chin juts. So very often, just before a confrontation, you might see someone saying something like, is there a problem here? With that flutter and that jut. I think it's really important for her to get it out there that she didn't really know him and they've only met a couple of times, which is why she's really forcing it into an answer where it doesn't belong. But I also think that this is creating some sort of inner conflict. Now, this could be because it's not entirely true, so we're seeing this processing and this confrontation within herself, but it's also possible that she knows people aren't going to believe her and she's kind of confronting those people who would say, no, you've met him more times than that. What I find really interesting about this case, however, is the question that she's answering. So Piers is saying, when did you find out that you were the person being portrayed in the show? And she says that 5 years ago on BBC, she saw Richard Gadd holding up a placard that said MP's wife stalker, and he called the show Baby Reindeer. But notice what she says next. She says, she saw that, and I thought, well, I've only met this guy 2 or 3 times. I don't really know him. Now think about that. What a strange thing to think if you were to see that on TV. Imagine if you were going through TV and you saw someone from your past that you knew holding up a placard, a poster, or a sign that's clearly a reference to you. What would your first thought be? I believe that most people would have the reflex of going, wait, what is that? Did this guy write a show about me? They'd be confused, annoyed, inquisitive. That's where their mind would go. Their mind wouldn't go immediately to, well, I've only met this guy 2 or 3 times. I don't really know him. Why does he have these posters about me? It doesn't follow.
And he'd called it Baby Reindeer. That's all I knew. And I thought, well, I've only met this guy 2 or 3 times. I don't know him.
So my immediate instinct when she said that is that that answer is not for that question, it's for us, the viewers. She wants to establish as early as possible that she's only met him 2 or 3 times and she doesn't really know him. She's trying to wedge the things that are important to her into questions where they don't really belong, but it's so important to get that out there. Now, what's really great about the instinct I had here and this interview in general is that these little red flags that we're seeing eventually get resolved. Because as the interview progresses, similar topics come back up, but they get vastly different responses. So right now, just keep in mind that this is what she said. When she saw him on BBC for the Edinburgh Festival, she thought, well, I've only met him 2 or 3 times. I don't really know him. Now, this whole idea of her wedging things that are important to her into questions where they don't belong and showing her hand is another thing that she does very often. In fact, she did it with the first question when Piers asked if she watches the show, because she said, no, not at all. I've heard about the court scenes and the jail sentences and this sort of stuff. She's really showing her hand here. She wants to focus on that scene. That's what she wants to talk about. There's something important about that to her. I think it's interesting that of all the things in the show that are alleged about her, this is the thing that she chooses to bring up and wants to put the focus on this topic. And I think there's a really good reason for that, so let's put a pin in it. Another thing I want you to pay attention to is how she's saying she hasn't seen the show, but she's heard about the court scenes and the sentences and that sort of stuff. But notice as we progress with these clips, how often Piers Morgan references a scene or a story from the show and she needs zero context. There's never a point where she looks confused to say, oh, was that in the show? Can you explain to me how that was used in the show? Anytime he references anything, she's very aware of what he's talking about. And that means only one of 2 things is possible. Either she has seen the show or she's talked to people about so much more than just the jail scenes because she seems to be caught up on pretty much everything. One way or the other, she misrepresented how familiar she is with the show.
It says in the show that you proceeded to return to the same pub time and again, but you never paid for a drink.
I don't drink alcohol. And
Did you pay for anything that you had in the pub?
lemonade or soft drinks.
Would he give you free drinks? Or?
No, absolutely not. This is sort of a depiction of me as a pauper who wouldn't stand around or stand a drink. It's nonsense.
It says that you told Richard Gadd that he looked like a baby reindeer toy you once had as a child, hence the name of the show.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I appear to have written most of the show in my sleep. I dressed
Did you have a baby reindeer
I
toy?
had a toy reindeer.
So that's true.
And he'd shaved his head. That bit is true. And there were reindeers in the shops. It was Christmas time or something. It was a joke. So I have inadvertently penned the name of the show.
Right. But that is true.
That's true. That's a true fact.
So Piers is saying that in the show, they say that she went to the pub where he worked several times, but she never paid for a drink. And look at her answer. She goes, I don't drink alcohol. So there's a lot going on there. First of all, that's a non-answer statement because his question, which he didn't quite finish, is that true? Did you go back to that bar and not pay for drinks? Nobody talked about alcohol, but she's saying, I don't drink alcohol. So that doesn't answer the question, non-answer statement. Second, there's an absence of denial because the main focus of the question is that she was returning back to that bar numerous times. That's the thing we want to know about, but she doesn't even address that at all. It's, I don't drink alcohol. This statement is also what interrogators call a resume or convincing statement. These are statements that we make to build up our character in moments where we feel like we're being knocked down. And although saying I don't drink alcohol isn't a massive point of pride, it's interesting that she's focusing on that, once again, of all the things that he's saying here, that's where she's going. I don't drink alcohol, I'm not that kind of person. And that's ultimately what the answer ends up being about, because she goes on to say that she doesn't drink alcohol, she drinks lemonade or soft drinks. And then she goes on to say that, she paid for them, they weren't on the house. But she never actually denies the part of the question, which is, did you show up there a whole bunch? But the real focus of this clip is what happens next, when he asks about the baby reindeer. Because in the show, there's a part where he has a voice message from her on his phone that he's listening to, and it gives the background of why she calls him baby reindeer. Because when she was little, she had a baby reindeer toy that meant a whole lot to her.
Basically, I had this wee cuddly toy when I was young. Went with me everywhere. Earliest memory I have, I think, was Christmas time. Well, you are the spit of that reindeer. The same nose, same eyes, Same cute wee mum. It means so much to me.
But with her answer here, she's revealing two things without wanting to that I think are huge. The first is, if we go back to her saying that she hasn't seen the show. Notice how she's not asking for any clarifications here. Like, oh, was that in the show? Did he talk about the baby reindeer? She seems very well aware of the explanation that was provided about baby reindeer in the show. She doesn't seem confused by it. But second, she confirms the exact story from the show. So she's going to go on to say, we're going to see it, that they only met a couple of times. It was only banter, light conversation. They were never friends, never had a relationship. Yet somehow in the show, he nailed this thing about her baby reindeer, which is something like it's from her childhood. So is that something that would come up in the middle of banter? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, when's the last time any of us walked up to a bartender like, hey man, how's the comedy career going? By the way, I don't know if I told you this, but I have this doll, like this little reindeer, that kind of reminds me of you, and I've had it since I was a kid. So I'm gonna call you baby reindeer from now on. Anyways, what kind of soft drink do you have? Because you know me and alcohol. It just doesn't make sense to me that if they only ever met 2 or 3 times and it was only ever banter, that he would know this thing about her from her childhood that she's here confirming they got right in the show. There's a statement she made there that I found really confusing. She says, I appear to have written most of the show in my sleep. And I'm not really sure what that means, because in Canada or in the US, when you say I did something in my sleep or I could do something in my sleep, it means that it's really easy. It's so easy I could do it in my sleep. Does it mean something different in the UK? Or is she saying that the show is really easy to write? Is she taking credit for having something to do with writing the show? Because at the end there, she says that she inadvertently came up with the title of the show. And that's something she does, by the way. She has these little bursts of these resume statements to give herself significance. And we're going to see a lot more of those, and they're going to be quite important. But that statement confused me. Let me know in the comments if you can make sense of what she meant by that. So no major red flags yet, but we're definitely seeing that she's trying to steer the conversation in the direction that she wants it to go, and she's inserting these little things that are important to her with a couple of slip-ups. But as the interview progresses, things are going to start to come up that don't really match up, and we're going to see some fascinating behaviors. But before we look at those scenes, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on for more behavioral analysis and practical psychology content.
Whilst bantering with you, Richard Gadd told you he'd like to hang your curtains. Is that true?
This, I think, was a holy arms joke about curtains and a lot of sexual innuendo.
He did say that?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it true that you caught Richard Gadd looking through your window after he followed you home one day?
False.
You never saw him at your house?
I didn't see him at my house. I think it would be impossible to look through a window.
Did anyone else ever see him there?
No.
Okay, so this whole curtains thing. So in the show, the hanging up your curtains joke has a lot of importance. And notice what happens the moment Piers brings it up. We see 2 very important things on her face. The first is an eye block. The second is her head goes like this. So eye blocking is when we close our eyes in the middle of a conversation or as a reaction. And there's a lot of great research on this, and they've even found that this is something that happens in individuals who are born blind. So it's not like they learned the behavior, it's innate. And eye blocking is very consistent with focus, trying to focus on something to either keep a thought in or keep a thought out. So if we're trying to do some math or think back to something, we might do this. But also if we're just trying to keep something out that we don't want to talk about or not face, it's very common to have those eyes shut like this. And especially with that jittery no like this, it's literally her reaction to, oh no, not the curtains. Let's not talk about the curtains. Now in my notes, I thought that's all it was. That the curtains came up and she had some sort of negative reaction to it. That was going to be it. But in the rest of this interview, the curtains come up twice more, and you are going to be shocked at the different story we get each time. It's mind-blowing. So just remember right now that she's saying that, oh, I think it was just this banter at the bar that they had going on. She doesn't seem to know a lot about it, and the little she knows, she's saying is banter. Please remember that. And then he asks about Richard following her home and, peeking through a window. And again, whether it's the curtains, whether it's the following her home, she asks no questions about what happened in the show. There's never a point where she goes, oh, what did they say about the curtains in the show? She knows. So again, it's a massive misrepresentation for in the beginning to have said she hasn't seen the show, she just heard about the court scene and stuff. At the very least, she's heard a lot more than just the sentences and the court scene.
In the course of your relationship with Richard Gadd, you send him 41,000 emails, 350 voice messages, 744 tweets, 48 Facebook messages, and 106 letters.
That's simply not true. If somebody was sending somebody 41,000 emails or something, they'd be doing how many a day? Loads.
Well, they'd be obsessively
Yeah,
contacting somebody.
absolutely no. Absolutely no.
What
None
did
of
you
that's
send him?
true. No, none of that's true. I don't think I sent him anything.
You never sent him anything?
No. I think there may have been a couple of emails exchanging, but that was it. Just jokey banter emails. That was it.
Netflix have said that these details are the real ones. That this is exactly
completely incorrect.
So you're denying sending anything to him?
There may have been a couple of emails.
Text messages?
No.
Facebook messages?
No.
Did you tweet him?
I may have done years and years ago.
You actually tweeted him numerous times.
No, it wasn't numerous. It was about 18 tweets there or 14
It's quite a lot to someone who's not that well known.
But we were all friends. You know, it was banter.
Right, but it establishes you were contacted. That's in public.
Yes, I mean, this
Did you write him letters?
Public, no. I think when I saw the rape interview, that's actually incorrect. What I said there, when I saw that in the Guardian, I said, "What a shame! It's not your fault." Something
you
like
did
that.
write to him.
One later.
Are you aware that if it was you sending those emails, it would be very easy for the police, for example, to work out exactly where they come from? That the IP address would reveal that.
Yes, I understand that, and it stays on forever. But the point is, this was years and years ago. We were congratulating him.
But it would all still be there.
Yes, I understand that. Yeah.
And if you sent 41,000 emails,
this is just a lot of rubbish. Yeah, so that should be stored there.
Well, they'd all be there.
Yeah.
Oh man. So Piers Morgan got quite a bit of criticism for the way he conducted this interview, especially because this is very condensed, but the stretch here where he talks about these messages and emails is really long, and he keeps just asking the same thing again and again and again, and at some point even gets a little bit confrontational between them. And for me, there was a bit of conflict, because on the one hand, this is a woman who decided to come on the show with good intentions, seemingly, to tell her side of the story, and it does seem like there was a lot of pushiness happening. But on the other hand, as an experienced interviewer, there were things that he was seeing, and we're going to see good examples of it a little later, where something wasn't making sense, and he had to push on certain things to get the truth out. Now here we're seeing a pattern that we definitely saw earlier, but this is really one of the best places to demonstrate it, and it's her baseline for trying to recall facts and numbers. So you'll notice several times throughout this, when she's trying to remember the numbers or when she wrote them, we're seeing those eyes go up and kind of search up here. This is very, very common for her, and we saw it throughout the entire interview. Anytime she was trying to recall details, dates, numbers, very consistent. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying this is true of everyone. I'm saying it's true for her. Some people close their eyes when they think back. Some people search around like this. For her, this is very consistent. But the main point here is just within this answer, forget what happens later, just within this answer, look how much her story evolves. Her answer actually changes. So right in the beginning, she says, when he asks about the emails, the tweets, and the Facebook messages, she goes, "None of that is true. I didn't send him anything." In those words, none of that is true. I didn't send him anything. But as Piers continues to ask, that changes to a couple of emails, jokey banter emails. So we went from none of that is true, I didn't send him anything, to now we have emails, tweets, and a letter. There may have been a letter. But here's my main point here. From years of experience with reading people, with conducting interviews, studying interrogations, there's something here that's lacking, and it's this. She's had the opportunity to come on a massive platform and clear her name. She knows the story that's out there, that she sent him tens of thousands of emails, tweets, Facebook messages, letters. It would have been very easy for her to go back into her emails and just print. If it's 10, more or less 10, go look it up, find it, find that number, maybe print them. You come on the show and you go, "Piers, here is every email I sent him. Here is every tweet I sent him. Count them. It's not tens of thousands. It's not even hundreds. It's a dozen." Just with that, by bringing those receipts, she could have put this entire thing to rest. I also find it interesting that she's having a hard time recalling how many emails and how many tweets, and maybe there was a letter. She's having a really hard time recalling. Now, this isn't unusual. There might be people who might think back and go, "Yeah, I guess there was this and I guess there was that." But there's two things that make it interesting. One, she prepared for this. She came here to fight this narrative. So she would have had those numbers. But second, something about memory. So notice here how she's having a hard time remembering, I'm not sure, 10 at most. So that would suggest that her memory is a little foggy. Just remember that.
2015 and the 22nd of March 2017. Are you guilty or not guilty?
Guilty?
You were charged with the harassment of Gerald Dunn and Eleanor Dunn between the dates of the 6th of June 2016 and the 22nd of March 2017. Are you guilty or not guilty?
Guilty? A little reindeer.
Now, again, there is obviously a resemblance between...
Do you think so?
Well, a bit, but
That's hardly flattery.
Well, I don't mean to flatter you or not flatter you. I just think there is a resemblance, you know, having met you, and you both speak Scottish people.
Yeah.
But the fundamental point of this is, did you take part in that? So did you go to jail? Did you have a
No,
trial?
of course not. Of course not.
Have you ever been to prison?
No.
Have you ever been charged with a
Nowhere
criminal
near it.
offence?
No.
Never?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing.
So that scene is completely invented.
That's completely false, and I don't think the actress sounds like me. I mean, people compare me to Lorraine Kelly, but I look nothing like Lorraine Kelly. We all happen to have dark hair, and we're Scottish, you know.
Okay, a lot going on there, starting with Piers Morgan when he talks about the resemblance between the two and some obvious indications of stress there, because she challenges him on that. And he goes, I think there's a resemblance because, you know, you both, and his words start to fall apart a little as he's looking for those words. We call this speechless fluency. And he goes, you're both Scottish people. And it's funny because he said there's a resemblance, obviously meaning physical, but the best he could think of is that because you're both Scottish, which is not something that can be seen. And that's fine, that's not what the interview's about. He wants to get past that. Let's talk about her though. So while she's watching that, now this is the scene that, remember in the beginning when she was asked if she saw the show, this is the scene she brought up. This was her focus as well. And as she's watching it, we see her turn her body towards the screen. She's looking at it straight up, and we're seeing quite a few reactions. So on more than one occasion, when facts are given, a name or a date, we see her eyes go up and search like this, to fact check, to line up with, okay, what was going on in my life at that time? She's trying to see, okay, is there a way that I could potentially disprove this? When the judge is saying, are you guilty or not guilty, we see a lip retraction like this. Just a quick lip retraction. Now, lip retractions are a little more complicated than lip compressions. Lip compressions like this, typically when they get tighter, is a withheld opinion or a disagreement. So you're just holding something in. Retraction can be that. Usually it's held though, like that, we're holding something in. Sometimes when it's that quick, the way she did it, it's a grooming gesture. It's a way to bring more color to the lips and look more presentable. And that would make a lot of sense because in this case, a depiction of her is being asked if they're guilty or not guilty. It stands to reason that she's self-aware and she's grooming just to bring her appearance up a little, give herself a little bit of a confidence boost. Now, I like that we saw a lip retraction because moments later we see a very clear lip compression, and it's when she's being talked about something else she was charged for and the dates are named, we see her finger shoot up like this, which is very consistent with, now hold on, you know, like we're trying to stop something, and right in that moment after the finger, we see a lip compression this time. The lips don't go inwards, they just tighten like this, which again is withheld opinion or disagreement. So there's something about that she disagrees with, she wants to make a correction to, she wants to amend. And then we get away from it, we get away from the scene, and Piers asks about this, and we get very, very clear and direct denials. No, no, did not happen. No, 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 nothing. And there's later we're gonna see some denials that are not very confident. We saw earlier her change the story as she goes along. Here, no caveat, no but, no, oh, well, I suppose there was this one thing, nothing. Now, this is where my analysis is going to take a little bit of an unexpected turn because as my regular viewers know, I don't like one-sided stories. And when I see that happening, I like to take a step back and try to see what else could possibly be going on. Now, although Netflix has said that this is a true story, Richard Gadd himself has done some interviews, and in one of the interviews with The Guardian, he said that the events have been tweaked slightly to create dramatic climaxes, and then later he said that they wanted it to exist in the sphere of art. Now, he also says that it's very emotionally true, but we have all these little things in there that go, it's art, and we tweaked it for dramatic climaxes. Now take that and add to it the fact that for quite some time he did a one-man show where he told this story. So after the story happened, he went on stage and he told it again and again and again. Now, not only as someone who has a degree in sociology and psychology, but as a mentalist and as someone who gets on stage and tells stories, let me assure you that the stories that we tell on stage get transformed. Not only in the way we tell it, but in the way we remember it. Because as we tell it, we develop a rhythm, a little joke here, cut that out, it's not connecting with the audience, add a little bit of this, oh, this is connecting, let's lean into that. And the more we tell it, the more it evolves. And there are certain things that even we have a hard time remembering. There's another psychological principle at play here, and it's something that's used in persuasion and marketing all the time, and it's called the commitment principle. The fact that once we voiced something, we get a lot more committed to that belief or to that idea. So think about the sequence of events here, right? We all turned on our Netflix, we saw this show, it was well rated, we watched it. Our jaws hit the floor. What an amazing show. And it's based on a true story. So we started calling our friends and family members and said, you're not gonna believe this show. This actually happened to the guy. That's the guy, he's the actor who was in the show. And in saying that, in voicing that, we believe in it more. We commit to it more because we don't wanna be wrong. We don't want someone to come out and go, no, you were totally wrong. This whole story is made up. So we're more invested in it. So in essence, a lot of people are going into this interview going, no, the show said this, the show said that, she's lying. But she's responding to something that, at least in parts, is admittedly tweaked. And that brings us to this jail scene. There are certain things about this that are different. Her unwavering denial. No, not at all, nothing.
Did you go to jail? Did you have a trial?
No, of course not. Of course not.
Have you ever been to prison?
No.
Have you ever been charged with a
Nowhere
criminal
near it.
offence?
No.
Never?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing.
The fact that if she was in jail or arrested or something, somebody could produce a record and she knows that, right? She did study law, so she knows that this could very easily be disproven. Also the fact that she herself keeps going back to this topic. She brought it up at first, and later we're gonna see a point where she goes, well, even if that stuff is true, the jail thing isn't. So she's really doubling down on this jail thing. With all that considered, I believe that this whole jail arrest thing is an exaggeration at the very least. I think that if Richard Gadd was flat out asked, was she arrested? Was she sentenced? He would say that that's one of the tweaks that they made for dramatic climax. There's something about her certainty and the fact that she herself keeps calling this scene out. But ultimately, could I be wrong? I could absolutely be wrong. I'm not saying that she's telling the truth. I'm saying her behaviors seem to indicate that she's telling the truth. In other words, she could have gone to jail. She could have been sentenced. This could be true, but she's denying it in a much more confident way than other denials. And if it turns out that this is true, she went to jail, she was sentenced, it wouldn't change the read. I would still tell you, wow, that's crazy, because the way she presented that denial was relatively more confident. That would remain even if it's actually true that she went to jail. The behaviors aren't indicating that. Okay, moving on, she hates being compared to this actress. She's gonna bring it up numerous times in that way where she wedges things into conversations where they don't belong because it's really weighing heavy on her. So that's gonna happen, we're gonna see that. But even here, when Piers says there's a resemblance, she says that's not very flattering, and then she has this very fake laugh. And the reason you know it's fake is because you see how fast it's wiped from her face.
Well, I don't mean to flatter you or not flatter.
Usually with laughter, we come down from it, a little progressive like this. Her just wipes off her face. She immediately goes to just dead serious. And then what does she do? Another classic move. She builds that character again with that little bit of a resume statement. People tell me that I look like Lorraine Kelly all the time, but I don't look like Lorraine Kelly. So she refutes something that she's the one who brought up. Nobody in that studio said she looks like Lorraine Kelly. She brought it up and then she denied it because she's hijacking the narrative. People out there think that I look like this actress. Let me just bring in this topic that I look like Lorraine Kelly because now maybe people will talk about that instead of this other thing. And notice when she says she looks like Lorraine Kelly, what happens to her posture, right? She perks up. We literally see her get more confident because confidence is grand, it's big, whereas a lack of confidence, we become smaller. So we literally physically see her building her confidence with that statement, with that comparison.
It's not a villain and victim storyline. I think you're left with a lot more than that. It's kind of two lost people.
What's your response to that?
I think they're milking it for all it's worth for the money. She doesn't even sound Scottish in that interview. Her accent seems to be varying.
Well, she's not. She's English. She's an actress.
I was going to say it sounds more Lancashire to me. Yeah,
no, she's English. She's an actress. She's putting on the voice for you.
Do you see it? Do you see her fixation of absolutely having to talk about something, so she just wedges it into a conversation? Because Piers was showing that scene to ask about what she thinks of what was said, what the actress said about how there isn't a villain, it's about two lost people. And it cuts back to Fiona, and she very briefly gives an answer about milking it, and then immediately goes to, and her accent, it doesn't even sound Scottish, like that, she doesn't even sound like me. So we go right back to like, that woman's not me, that's her fixation. Which, I mean, even Piers calls her out on that and goes, yeah, she's not, she's English, she's an actress. Which is such a bizarre thing to have to explain. Okay, let's talk body language. Right at the end of that clip, we see a very big and obvious grooming gesture with her tongue on her teeth like this, and we even hear it. And here's a great takeaway. Whenever you see that gesture like this, ask yourself 2 questions. 1, is the person eating? And 2, is the person wearing lipstick? Because the gesture is very common when someone's eating, in order to make sure there's nothing in their teeth, and quite common when someone's wearing lipstick as well, to make sure that they haven't stained their teeth. If neither of those things is present, this is the awareness shifting inwards. It's purely a grooming gesture of the person being self-aware and grooming just to make themselves appear more presentable. Now in this case, she is wearing lipstick. So it could be because she's aware that she's on TV and she's just taking this chance while they're playing another clip to just kind of make sure she looks good. But I do think that it's quite reactive, especially with that loud audible at the end. And immediately when she talks about how they're milking it, we see that same flutter with the eyes from earlier that we see with her consistently in moments of processing emotional confrontation. So I think it's quite confrontational. I think, she's kind of grooming there, self-aware. She's having a confrontational thought here. Again, she takes the first chance to be like, she doesn't even sound like, she doesn't even Scottish. So I just really think she's stuck on this being compared to this actress. She does not like it.
23rd of September, my curtains need hung badly.
We were trying to encourage him because with this first show or something like that.
Okay, so this is the second time of 3 that the curtains come up. And already the story's shifting a little. Not dramatically, but a little. Because the first time, if you recall, he brought up that Richard made some sort of statement about hanging curtains, and she said, oh, that I think was a Holy Arms joke. Like, I think that's what it was. Some joke they had at the bar amongst themselves. She in no way suggests that she was part of it or that she knew what it was. But here she is referencing that, saying she needs her curtains hung badly. And when asked about it, notice again that she kind of like laughs right at the end, pretty loud, to interject, to just jump in, and to clarify that it was just a joke. That she says we, I don't know who we is, we're trying to encourage him for his show. So it's shifting a little. First it was, I think it's this joke that I'm not part of. Now it's a joke that I'm knowingly part of. Wait till you see what it becomes the third time it's referenced.
You did graduate from Aberdeen?
Yes.
With a law degree. A trainee role at the legal firm McPhail Lawrence Partnership in 1997. Is that true?
It was called L&L Lawrence. I think she forgets the name of her own firm. It was called L&L Lawrence.
But that's all true. She gave you a trainee job.
She lured me away from another firm. She headhunted me from another firm because she needed someone to do employment law. And I'm pretty good at employment law, so...
She said that she had to sack you days later because you were completely incapable of behaving yourself.
I walked. Her staff were really, really rude to me. Most people, half the Labour Party had been up there at one point or another and walked.
Why would 2 people who have no contact with each other at all, Laura Wray and Richard Gadd, why would they both portray you as a very unpleasant harasser?
I don't know why Richard Gadd has, but Laura Walker, it was certainly because I was going for parliamentary selection.
The 2 different, you get my point, 2 different people.
Yeah, but Richard Gadd has Googled that. Richard Gadd has used that as
well, that's in the drama.
Show.
Is when they find out that you had previously harassed this family.
I haven't harassed that family. I didn't harass that family.
I don't want to spend too much time on this one. We could, there's a lot to talk about, but it's more about this pattern of her blame shifting and building her own character, which we've seen several times, but we're seeing it big time here. So for those of you who don't know the story, this isn't the first accusation she has. In the show, they referenced that she was accused previously, but there are plenty of articles out there, even recently, as a response to the Piers Morgan interview from Laura Wray, who's the widow of former MP Jimmy Wray. And she stands by till today the fact that for years, this woman made their life hell. And she calls her out specifically, that she stalked them, she followed them, made big public commotions. What's interesting is here, not only is Fiona building herself up on numerous occasions, she's knocking Laura down because she corrects the name of the firm and she goes, I think she forgets the name of her own firm. Like in this condescending way, in almost an attempt, it's like almost the opposite of resume statement. In the same way that resume statements build us up and our image, I think she thinks that by doing something like that, she can knock someone's image down. So it'll seem like she's the more credible one. But then look at the way she again hijacks the narrative, like we've seen her do numerous times, where when she's asked if she was hired, she corrects it to go, she headhunted me. I was working elsewhere, she came and sought me out. And then when it said that she was fired, she goes, I walked, it was my decision. And at the end, I haven't harassed that family. So once again, she's trying to hijack the narrative and spin it in a way that favors her.
The voice messages he's kept apparently, and there
He
is
was maybe taping me in the Holy Arms. I don't know if he's got any voicemail.
But if he has 350 voice messages and it's you,
it doesn't mean the drama is true.
but is it possible he's got 350 voice
I
messages?
doubt that very much. I just don't think so.
You doubt it?
Yeah, I doubt it. I mean, unless
Wouldn't
he's
he
been
be
taping me.
I mean, if you've never really contacted him, if he's
He
got
could have
three,
been taping me in the Holy Arms, though.
but if he's got 350
I've not contacted
but if these
him.
are on his phone.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether they're on a phone, tablet, whatever they're on. I've not contacted
But I'm curious,
him.
why would there even be a possibility of him having that number of voice messages from you?
Because he's crazy, he wants to make this up. I mean, I've not phoned the guy. I don't have his number. I mean, my point is, though, even if that were true, I didn't lunge at him across the bar. I didn't sexually assault him in a canal. I didn't go to jail.
I understand. Your point that are you challenging him to reveal this evidence?
No, I would challenge him to leave me alone.
Because you're calling him a liar and you're calling Netflix accomplice to
I didn't
these
use
lies.
those words. I said the story, the play, the Netflix show is not true. Even if the email thing was true, the rest is not. So
Why would you qualify that, Fiona?
Sorry, why would I what?
Why would you suddenly qualify even if it's true about the emails?
I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Right, but when you say even if the emails were true,
I didn't send him 41.
it doesn't mean the more serious stuff is.
Yeah, this is a big one. In the words that she's saying, she's just spewing so much hidden truths. So first and foremost, on numerous occasions, she says that, well, maybe he taped her. You know, he taped her at the Holy Arms. That wouldn't sound like a voicemail, right? A voicemail is you call someone and it's you and you're saying something to that person. If these voicemails that he produces is a noisy environment where she's talking to someone about something else, you would know that it's in a bar. So it wouldn't have the same vibe as a voicemail at all, nor would it be a voicemail. It would be a recording. So we're already seeing this excuse, right? Before we saw for the jail thing, a clear no way, no how denial. Here, there's some excuses. Oh, well, maybe if you record this, maybe if you did that. So she's already preemptively trying to defend him having voicemails. Right in the beginning, when Piers says that there are voice messages that he's kept, her answer to that is, it doesn't mean the drama is true. And this is one of 3 times where she's gonna go like, okay, even if that voicemail might be a thing, you might have some version of that, it doesn't mean that it makes some of these other things true. So again, she's showing her priorities. As the conversation progresses, we hear her say, I doubt that, and I don't think so about the voice messages. If these messages didn't exist, it would be a no, nothing. The way she said it about the jail earlier. Then we get a line that's like 2 gifts in one. She says, even if that were true, I didn't lunge at him across the bar, didn't assault him in a canal, I didn't go to jail. So she's focusing on these things. So again, even if that were true, even if the messages were true, so she's acknowledging that, these other things aren't true. So again, it's that same thing she does where she focuses on the things she wants to focus on. But in so doing, the second thing is, again, she's showing her hand. How do you know that in the show they allege that you lunged at him across the bar, that you assaulted him in a canal? You earlier said that you haven't seen the show, you just heard about the jail thing. All of a sudden, you knew all these things about the show, and she wasn't asked about this. She volunteered this information. Then the big one, I just can't ignore this. Piers says, are you challenging him to reveal the evidence? And she says, no, I'm challenging him to leave me alone. Why? Think about it. Why isn't she challenging him to reveal this evidence, right? If she thinks that he's lying and that these voice messages don't exist, that they're not out there, she should say, of course I'm challenging him. She should look right at the camera and say, Richard, play those voice messages that I supposedly left you, please. And then once again, she says, even if the email thing is true, the rest is not. So once again, going to focus on those things that I do think they gave themselves a bit of artistic license there to exaggerate, like they said, for dramatic effect. So she's going back to those things, and I think she's telling us where those things are. She's going, the jail thing, like she keeps going back to that. She brings that up. So I think she's contrasting it because she's going, even if the emails were true, aka those might be true, the jail thing definitely isn't. So Piers goes, why would you qualify that? Why would you say even if it were true? And what does she say? I'm just playing devil's advocate. Now here's the really big flaw with that. Devil's advocate is something you do when you don't know the answer. When you're speculating on something and you go, well, could it be this? I'm just playing devil's advocate. If you know the answer, there's no devil's advocate. This isn't devil's advocate. If there are no emails, if there are no voice messages, there's no devil's advocate. It doesn't exist. He made that up. He also made the jail thing up as much as this. It's all made up. And if he has it, I challenge him to produce the evidence.
I could have, listen, I've been a journalist 40 years. I could have discovered it was you in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Once I'd watched
Yes,
that.
I agree. I discovered it was me when I saw the BBC breaking news baby reindeer show at the Edinburgh Festival, when I was Googling up just the news that day or the weather or something, and this came up, and he was holding up a placard or a newspaper article, MP's wife stalker, all you need to do is Google that. Then I saw the name of the show and I thought, bloody hell, what's he up to? And I tried to get a friend to go see the show because she was based in Edinburgh, but she was on holiday. Nobody I know had seen that show either. So I was really shocked. I was very upset for 2-3 days.
And there we have another inconsistency. So let's remember right at the beginning of the interview when he asked her, how did you know this show was about you? And she said she saw on BBC News that he was doing the show, and she said, I've only met him 2 or 3 times. I don't really know him. That was her thought. She said nothing about being upset for 2 to 3 days. She said nothing about, bloody hell, what's this about? And it goes back to what I was saying. When she first said that, my reflex was to go, it doesn't really make sense that she would see that this show is probably about her, and she would go, oh, I've only met this guy 2 or 3 times. I don't really know him. That was her just pushing that in there for us. But now we're getting her true hand, which is her saying when she saw that, she thought to herself, she knew immediately it was about her, and she said, bloody hell, what's he up to? And it made her upset, and she tried to get a friend to go see it, whereas none of this was even whispered about when she first mentioned having seen this BBC thing. By the way, another thing, in this segment, she's going to reference a few times having seen that BBC thing, and there's always a little too much emphasis on how she came across it. Like here she's saying, I was Googling just the news that day or the weather. So for me, what's confusing is, what were you Googling to look up the weather where the result that came up was that a bartender is doing a fringe show called Baby Reindeer? But she always has this bit of an emphasis of like, oh, I definitely wasn't looking for that. I was Googling this other thing, or I was looking up the weather, I don't know, and I came across this. Something in my gut is saying that this is again her slipping up a little, that she wasn't Googling the weather or the news. She was looking for news about him, or somehow, somebody mentioned something. I don't think it was as random as she's making it out to be, because she's trying a little too hard to make it seem random.
You're in love with him?
Yes. Is that a serious question?
Yeah.
No.
It's not a question of, by his own admission, he has said that he led you on at times. And he clearly
I gave him the brush off. He asked me to sleep with him with a big green spot in his face one day. I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested.
He asked you to do what?
He asked me to sleep with him. He said, would I like my curtains fixed? And I laughed. And he said, that's a euphemism. Do you want me to come home with you? And I said, I've got a boyfriend. I gave him the brush off big time, I think.
And boom, there it is. Please take a second to think about this. It's going to be a while before we see something like this, where within the same story, something changes this dramatically. The first time this curtain thing came up, she said, I think it was a joke at the bar. I think. The second time it came up, she tweeted about it. She was now part of the joke. Now it's no longer a joke. This is her evidence that he was legitimately trying to get with her, because he said to her, would you like to get your curtains fixed? Straight up to her. And that it was a euphemism for trying to get with her. It's not a joke. It's her evidence. Guys, if nothing else, just the fact for me that she would present this at first as this joke that she didn't really know what it was, maybe at the bar, and now it's her proof, her way to say that this was him trying to come on to me. He said that, it's a euphemism. He wants to come on. I was like, no, I have a boyfriend. This is just such a great big sign that she can't keep up with what she's saying, and whatever serves her best in that moment, she'll just spin it that way. right? It served her better in the beginning that she's not really in on this joke, because the point she was trying to make then was that she didn't really know him. But now that she's trying to prove the point that he was actually the one coming on to her, we're repurposing the curtains thing for his way to come on to her.
A law degree.
Continues, yeah.
Law degree. So you're obviously very bright. How did you do at school?
I've got a photographic memory. I was top of the school, apart from the science.
And with your law degree, what grade did you get?
Not bad. I mean, all right.
What was it?
I just did an ordinary degree and then a diploma in legal practice.
Well,
and I did a
what grades did you
politics
get
degree. All right grades. I mean, not top of the year or anything,
No,
but all right grades.
when you do a degree, you get a...
Yeah, you're asking me what marks I got for 13 subjects. I can't remember.
Photographic memory. Now, I'm not going to get into the debate of photographic memory. It's a very debated concept in psychology. Also, as a magician and mentalist, we use a lot of memory systems to improve memory. I was on a Netflix series called Brainchild and an episode about memory where I talked about memory. So I have a very long relationship with the concept of memory, and photographic memory is something that might mean different things to different people. But at the very least, it means she thinks she has a very good memory. And immediately after saying that she has a great memory, photographic memory, she can't remember her specific grades, which it's fine. I don't remember my specific grades even a little bit, but I'm also not claiming to have a photographic memory. Also, if we go back in the conversation, there were so many instances where she couldn't remember the number of emails, and he asked again and again, couldn't remember the number of tweets. I think maybe this, at most that, maybe here, maybe there was one letter. Her memory was failing her miserably when they were talking about that. If you're gonna say that there's a lot of things you can't distinctly remember, don't come out and say you have photographic memory, because then we're going to expect you to go back and tell us exactly how many voicemails or emails or tweets you sent, exactly how many times you guys had conversations or you went to his shows. All things that she conveniently can't really remember.
If it came to it, would you take a lie detector test?
Yeah. Possibly, yeah. I would need to consult other lawyers about that.
If we set one up, you would do it.
A lie detector test for what? You know,
Well, no, the police,
or
as you know,
what?
the police use them. They're just an indication.
They
really
use them for mass murder and things like that.
Well, no, they
yeah,
use them in many cases just to determine whether they think someone's telling
They
the truth.
don't use them that much. I know you've done the programs of women behind bars and things. I confess, I think I've just seen one, but it's not used that much.
Well, look,
So much more of the same. So he asks, would you take a lie detector test? And she goes, yeah, possibly, yeah. For what? So it starts positive and then it slowly crumbles, like a lot of her other answers. And then she asks, possibly for what? I don't know. We want to know where you're grocery shopping and want to see if you're telling the truth. Obviously for the things that are alleged in the series. I don't think it needs to be asked. Then she says that, those things are for mass murderers. So again, I think she's subtly showing her hand and saying, look, I may have done some stuff, but I'm nowhere near the types of things you need a lie detector for. So again, I think in her head, she's just minimizing the things that she did do. Then she does that classic thing where she lowers others to elevate herself. And this is a pattern in this entire interview. But there she goes, it's a subtle little jab where she goes, I know you've done the program Women Behind Bars, and I must confess, I think I've just seen one. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many you've watched, but she just throws that in there to remind him, like, it's not something everybody watches. Like, it's not my cup of tea. She just puts that in there to kind of shift that power dynamic like she keeps doing. Which brings me to another thing, which I mentioned quite a few times, but I didn't really say why. And it's really important. In the series, Martha is portrayed as someone who makes herself look more important with her words. She'll say things that aren't true about accomplishments, the important friends that she has, the people that she works with, that she's a big time. She builds herself up quite a bit. It's a habit that she has. And I think we can agree that in this interview alone, we saw Fiona several times build herself up and knock others down. How she looks like Lorraine Kelly. How she has a photographic memory. She was the top of her class. How she was headhunted and she quit that job. It wasn't good enough for her. So many times she had these things where she built herself up in ways that don't necessarily feel true. And it's so weird because the character in the show was exactly the same way. What I'm trying to say is there are one too many things like that, like the baby reindeer, where Richard would have had to known to write that into the character, which means it couldn't have been 2 or 3 encounters, just casual chats and banter. It couldn't have been that. He knows things about this woman that we're seeing in her behavior patterns. Okay, so to wrap it up, what do I think of this whole thing? It might actually surprise you a little because, again, I say this a lot. With analysis, I have to pick the moments where I have the most to talk about. But overall, my opinion might be a little bit more balanced than the way I've been talking about in this video. And it's all based on the fact that the accusation is a series where the creator himself said it was tweaked. So we don't even know what we're coming in with. And I've seen a lot of people defend things like, oh, the series said this, so, she's lying. But even the creator has said that there were some tweaks. So keeping in mind that the accuser here is something that we don't exactly know where the tweaks are, I think that some of what she's saying in this interview is true. And I think we're clearly seeing what those things are because she keeps reshifting to them, refocusing to the things that aren't while trying to minimize the things that are true. And we're seeing vast differences in her confidence in those things that she's not denying and then the things that she really flat out is denying. If Fiona came to this interview and said, listen, Piers, I met this guy at the bar. I thought he was charming. He led me on. There were certain things he did that made me think he was interested in me. So yeah, maybe I got a little too attached. I think I emailed him one too many times. I'm very sorry about that. I shouldn't have done that. But this aren't true. And I do feel remorse. I think a lot more people would go, okay, cool. And if she said this didn't happen and that didn't happen, we'd go, okay, fine. Maybe those things didn't happen. But because there are certain things in the way that she's saying that even within her own narrative can't be true, because she's saying something and then undoing it, we just look at her and go, she's a liar, we can't believe any of this. So things get thrown out that maybe shouldn't because her credibility is lowered. So do I think everything that the series Baby Reindeer alleged is entirely true in the way it was alleged? I don't. I think there's enough here, and even in his own words, to know that there are certain things that are exaggerations, didn't go down that way. But is there a high likelihood that she in fact did stalk him, wrote to him one too many times, showed up places where she shouldn't have been, got a little clingy, also had those behaviors with other individuals before him? I think it's quite likely. And I also think that in her own head, she's minimizing it and making excuses for herself and building herself up. So there are a lot of things that could be misrepresented. And the truth is definitely somewhere in the middle of these two versions. But I think that just going on this interview, there's enough here in the behaviors to determine that she's hiding a lot, changing a lot in her favor, and building herself up to something that doesn't quite reflect the way things went down. But let me know in the comments what you think about all this. Tons of interesting stuff here, and I'll see you on the next one.